Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Good morning.
Let's roll this logo and we'll get started.
Okay.
All right, here to
That's a
talk
good
about.
one. I like that. That's a
Yeah,
feel
I
good.
I like the sound of the film projector. It ties us back. Even
Yeah,
everything's gone digital. It just makes you nostalgic for the
it does. And
movies.
it's got good energy.
Yeah, I'll pass it on to the higher ups and let them know they've done
Okay.
well. So we're here to talk about your web series, your series, The Breaks, which I saw on Reveal, and it's always best if the creators discuss it. So, in your own words, what is The Breaks?
The Breaks is entourage on a surfboard. It's a group of friends coming
Hmm.
up through the world of sponsored and competitive surf and balancing that juxtaposition between, life in the spotlight and life on the waves and all the craziness that happens, the conflicting craziness between those two worlds and where people really want to be and be in balance between those two.
Are you a surfer yourself? Is that what brought this on?
Yeah, I'm a lifelong action sports guy. I grew up in Montana, so it started off as dirt bikes, and wakeboarding, and different seasons, different things, snowboarding. I didn't start surfing until I went to Los Angeles, and it was so incredibly hard to get. Snowboarding you pick up in 2 days. A
Yeah.
lot of this other stuff you can kind of get right away, and surfing, I think I was in the water maybe 6 times before I caught a wave. You stand up and whatever. And when I caught that wave, I said, "I get it. I get it. This is the grandfather of all the action sports." And yeah, so I am a surfer, and that was the inspiration for the show.
I've tried surfing a couple times and felt like I was going to die and gave it up. My wife's a surfer. She was always at Venice Beach at the pier surfing when we lived out there. Met a lot of friends through that little surf
Yeah.
community that we get together all the time, and I understand the appeal. I'll break my neck if I try it. I'm pretty certain.
If
So
you do get it, if you get that first one, it'll hook you. But yeah,
yeah,
I did Venice a bunch. A lot of floating plastic bags out there in that lineup.
yeah. There's those garbage days where you're like, no,
Yeah.
not today, not today. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's half of it. You do come from a surfing background. What's your filmmaking background or your writing background?
Man, all the thousands of paths you could take in life. I was making YouTube-ish videos back in 2001, 2002, 2003, and of course there was no YouTube, or maybe it was just starting out. I don't think it was, but we were shooting on tape and then loading that into the computers on our school, and we'd be shooting all this inappropriate kind of jackass content and then sneaking it into the computer lab and trying to edit
I have
between like 3 and 4.
there's a shelf over here with 1,500 mini DV tapes on it, and I'm pretty sure 50% of it is the same sort of jackass style stuff
Yeah.
with my friends.
Oh
Yep.
yeah. So we would sneak it in, right as school ended, before basketball practice started. So I've always been making films, and writing and telling stories. I did not go right out of school into that. I traveled the world building, large satellite dishes the size of this house,
Oh wow.
and then ended up in Los Angeles and did motorcycle stunt work and acting for a couple years. Took about 2 years to see those projects get through post and start
Yeah, yep.
coming out, and they were all, not great. And I thought I could do better than this, so I bought a camera and some lights, and my buddy bought a sound mixer and a Rode mic, and we started making films. And
Amazing.
I can't remember the number this is. Maybe this is like the seventh or eighth project that we did, but we finally, your talent is rising as your capabilities rise, and this was maybe where everything matched up.
Yeah.
This was a really good project.
Hit that summit. Yeah, you're right. It's because it takes so long to develop, but at the same time your skills can get better, but that the creative, the story's also got to be there. And it feels like you did the right path where you learned to make films, you had your love of surfing, and when you cross those two things together, that's the magic. That's the magic ingredient.
To be honest, the magic ingredient here was opportunity. We were pitching a wakeboarding movie called Shake the Lake,
Okay.
and keep in mind, times have changed. This was when I was really coming up. This was MTV, and it was Jackass, and there wasn't anything cooler than girls in bikinis and guys, flipping on their wakeboards, and it was the bro stock. And
Well, and a legacy of like 80s sports films that's exactly what it
Exactly.
was. Yeah.
Exactly. So this wasn't the highest highbrow piece of art, but it was fun and it was awesome. And we were in development on that, and I would have seen that through. We had a great script written by my brother and I, and it was optioned twice. And we would have seen that through, but we had an opportunity to do the breaks, and there was some brands involved, and they wanted to put money into it, and
Okay.
there was some crazy technology piece to it, called hotspotting, where we could outline your hat or your my
Hmm.
elevated shirt here, and then as though, or a pair of sunglasses or whatever, and as those come on screen, if people recognize that, they can click on it, and it bloop, puts it down into a little shopping cart that pops up at the end of your
Oh,
episode.
wow. So like
So
augmented reality in a sense
yeah.
before
And now
augmented
this
reality
is
came around. Yeah.
kind of, in a sense, is existing in the world. Just where, if you hit select on your remote, you can see all the actors who are on screen at the
Yeah.
time. We had an industry standard architecture where the music playing would be in the top left, the actors would be on the bottom, the location it was filmed in would be in the right, and then any branded content on screen would be shoppable or clickable. And
Do you ever have any regrets of being just ahead of the
that's
time,
what
ahead
killed
of
it.
the curve?
That's
Yeah.
We pitched this show to 30 legitimate studios and blah, production companies, and 18 of them loved it,
Yeah.
and 12 of them were ready to do it. Like, oh, did we tell you about the hot spotting? And that would just blow people's mind.
Yeah.
But they'd get it, but they didn't know what to do with it. So they kicked us over to Yahoo. We just never quite clicked on both of those. There was people that loved, Entourage on a surfboard. Cool, I get
Yeah.
it. If it's not going to cost a bazillion dollars, let's do it. You guys have a great proof of concept here. You know what you're doing. You can get the brands and the actors on board. Go get it. And then we put in that technology, and they're half of them would glaze over, the other half would see dollar signs, but we were the tip of the spear, and a
I
lot of
have.
pioneers end up with arrows in their back.
Yes, I am not unfamiliar. I did the world's first live film for Blumhouse, a horror film, and using Twitter's Periscope, a very consumer, like a found
Sure,
footage
I
live
remember.
movie.
Yeah,
But
that's amazing.
we were ahead of the curve again, but now in the pandemic days, everybody's done a live play. But people have also figured out how to monetize it, and like so I like that expression of like pioneers end up with arrows in their back, because that's how it feels. Like I'm glad that I did it, because to me it's more about the creative than the business model, from an artist standpoint. But then you're like, man, if I just waited 2 years and maybe no one else
Yeah,
did it, I could have came out and done something bigger with it. But all that being said, so what I want to explain to our viewers, the casual viewers watching Reveal and watching movies and TV in general don't always understand, the independent route. So you do this as an independent series, definitely a risky venture, not already having a network attached or anything. What was sort of the model or the plan of release of how you were making this?
yeah. It stumbled around a bit because I knew that, and that is a huge risk, guys. If you're and girls, if you're gonna make your movie, make sure it has a home first. And this did, in theory, have a home. So the brands that were involved, they wanted to come in, and each of them was going to pay like $1,500 if we could get
Hmm.
30 brands per episode. We had a very, very healthy shootable budget for the types of films we were doing. And we were going to shoot a season's worth of this show, and then it would live on its own and be monetized and be happy, and nobody would get rich, but it would at least do it, and then we could shop it around to see if we could get it picked up somewhere else. um, Through the course of pre-production and development, it got much bigger, and we got brands on board, Jeep and Chrysler and Red Bull, and a talent attached like world champion surfer Sonny Garcia, and it just got much bigger and much more expensive, and better than it originally was supposed to be. So the original home was no longer appropriate. So we had to find
Yeah.
a new home for it, which we did. But again, it just didn't quite work out. A lot of contracts, a lot of enthusiastic parties. But we
It's a
have only
minor
shot the 2 episodes.
it's a minor miracle that anything in entertainment ever gets finished. And that's
Yeah,
just the truth. Like there's just so many moving parts, so many people, so many egos, so many decision makers, so much second guessing, that every time I see a movie, good or bad, I have to like stand up and clap for the filmmakers to be
Yes,
like, I know what you have
appreciate
gone
that.
through to get this made, and it probably wasn't easy. It's interesting. Reveal actually has a show called The Negotiators. That it's a show about real estate agents that negotiate for your home, and if you pause the series, you get local listings of negotiators in your
Very
area that can have,
cool.
so not unlike what
Yeah.
you're talking about. And I feel like there's so much interactive TV still to come that hasn't been done yet. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost shocking to me that there's not, obviously, there's choose your own adventure movies
Choose
now
your
that
own
people have
adventure.
figured
I've
out.
been thinking
What
about that for a decade.
I was
Yeah.
trying to do a choose your own adventure music video forever,
You
but couldn't
you don't
couldn't
have
get.
to duck. My wife's bringing me a coffee.
Oh man, where's
You're
my?
live.
I'm my own assistant. I got my water. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I just think there's so much room for it. So it's interesting that It's funny because watching the breaks on Reveal, I wouldn't have known sort of some of this history and things that happened. So when you're in production, were you writing and producing, or were you also directing?
I was going to direct because when you're an indie filmmaker, that's what you got to do. But no, I got to give a shout out to Amy Paffrath. She, the actress in the movie, she really pushed to get this made, and all of this stuff started happening at the same time. Our cinematographer and our director, Will and Jason, those guys came on board and they put money into it because they liked it and they believed in it. They
Hmm.
appreciated how my brother and I were producing this. So we wrote it, and then there was no ego involved. We brought on other writers because I was working with my agent, and I said, let's incorporate everybody from this agency in this project because it does have a good shot of going somewhere. So why not put as many professional people as we can in here? And all of our industry is like an elevator platform. If somebody comes up, everybody rises together.
Yep.
So I did. I was happy to give up the reins on directing to Will Wernick, and he did a fantastic job. And then I think that there were so many amazing things about the breaks, but the way it's shot, Jason is an absolute legend behind the camera, and he hooked us up on gear and brought all of his uh, talents and coworkers to the show, and just turned out really fantastic. But I had every intention of doing it all, and then slowly stepped back into basically producing and acting. I was Daniel in the show.
Yeah, I definitely recognized your face as soon as you popped in here. I'm like, oh, Andy's in it. I do like you get sucked into the characters very quickly. It's a very fun and energetic show, and obviously the sports nature of it is great. But I felt like the characters were developing nicely. Like, where can you give a hint of where the characters? Actually, you know what? Let's not spoil it for the audience for people who haven't seen it
Okay,
yet.
I don't mind talking a little bit. To touch on that, a lot of pilots, like even the actors and stuff, you're kind of settling in. I think by
Mhm.
the end of the second episode, you're like, okay, we got it, we're ready to
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Which is a little sad that we didn't film the rest of the season because the story arcs, it's an incredible first season, and it's fun and it's funny and it's meaningful. And I always say, like, these types of projects, they're not highbrow, but they are meaningful, and the spirit of friendship and coming of age
yeah,
comes through, and it transcends audiences, and it's just really good. And you can see that, when Tyler Bird, our main character, pro surfer, goes to talk to Bob, the old school, longboard guy who's
yeah.
not so cool, but even he has to sell magazine covers and to get magazine covers to sell his brand. And um, it was just cool. So yeah, I think there's some good story arcs in there.
What beaches were you shooting at?
We shot at Huntington Beach, which was our permitted beach, and then we went up to Malibu without permits and shot at Leo Carrillo. So we did all of our intricate scenes, I think, in Santa Monica and New Huntington, and then our B-roll was just anywhere we could find a sunset and a couple of rocks and some waves.
That's it sounds familiar. I may have done some non-permitted shoots around the Santa Monica Pier and El Matador
Yeah,
Beach and such in my time in LA. It's what you got to do.
that's what you got to
Uh,
do.
and I don't think audiences understand how much of independent film making are, what's known as like stolen shots or stealing shots by just going somewhere, getting in and out as quick as you can, and like and getting that production value without necessarily paying the full freight of the permits. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, you have your budget, and then imagine the sinking feeling in your stomach when they're like, "Okay, we need 6,000 for insurance," and then
Yeah.
you want this location. There's 3,000, and you're like, "Okay, we just took a hit here." Um, but I also, it was very freeing to spend that money. But most of it was mine and my brothers, and again, a lot of our crew. Production crew put in their own personal funds. So people really believed in this movie, and we treated everyone great. We had grips, crying at the end of this saying, "Hey, let's go, I'll continue to work for your your pocket change." I was paying people
Yeah.
in our sponsored watches. We flew Sonny Garcia up, gave him a $600 watch as payment to work on the show, because we were just making it work. But everybody got fed and treated right, and we filmed in wonderful locations out in Apple Valley, doubling as Joshua
Yep.
Tree, and down at the beach. Production in RVs.
Making it work. I think it's interesting too. You said, I think it's that camaraderie. If you can build a really good, spirit of adventure and spirit of we're all in this to make something great on an indie film set, you will maximize everyone's talent. And if you can have a relaxed, fun set, it makes all the difference. Like, filmmaking is not easy by nature. The importance of keeping your cast and crew happy is so
Paramount,
undervalued, I
yeah.
think, sometimes. And too much bad behavior or narcissistic directors and things can really lead things into a sour path very quickly.
Well, filmmaking should be this summer camp adventure, right? And that was
Mm,
the
yep.
type of content we were creating. But we really wanted to have an adventure, and we went out into the desert, and people were sleeping in caves, not because they didn't have a nice warm bed, but because they were having so much fun. They wanted to build a fire at the end of the shoot and hang out and have a beer, and get a little power
Well,
fluctuation here.
little
But that's what's
paranormal
so
activity. Yep.
terrible about this film Rust is what it sounds
Mhm.
like a fun place to be and a great experience to be a
Yeah.
part of. And you read all those stories, which we don't have to go into, but it just sounds like that was not being done the right way on
Yep.
any level.
Don't you got to always cut corners to make indie films, but there's certain corners you cannot cut and should never attempt to cut.
Hmm.
But we like to keep these things about this lens. So that's pretty much it. But everybody watching at home, check out The Breaks. If you're finding Reveel'd on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or anywhere that isn't revealed.net, reveal.net, it's a streaming platform, wonderful content, all kinds of short films, documentaries, features,
Vouch for that.
web series, and it's free. You just sign up for an account the same way you would any streaming platform, but you don't have to put down a credit card. You'll never be billed a monthly fee. So if that's not enough reason to check out The Breaks, Zach has just told you a million other reasons. So
Thank you
Zach,
very
thanks
much,
for
Gavin.
joining us today.
You got it. And if anybody watches The Breaks and they need a little more action sports in their life, ShakeTheLakeComic.com is the next project, and that will someday, you can mark my words here, be a live action. But until then,
Amazing.
cheers. Catch you later.